Welcome to Babbling Rooks. My name is Pineapple Mendel.
That sounds really good right now, except I don't feel like I should eat anything. I'm gonna be Totem Pole Kyle.
Cool. I actually don't like pineapple, at all. So,
What?
yeah.
Mendel!
I don't.
Oh,
It's not that good. Um,
how are we friends? It's like all I eat down here. It's the reason why there's a lot of tooth decay in my mouth because of all the acidity.
yeah, and you lose your fingerprints too.
Yeah, so good, Mendel.
Anyway, pineapple is kind of disgusting. I like it in my crawfish boils, but aside from that, I'm not a big fan. And I don't even eat the chunks of pineapple in the crawfish boil. I just kind of like the flavor that it adds to the crawfish boil itself. So,
I mean, I could see that. Like for a crawfish boil, it'd be a little bit different, but even still, Mendel. Shame.
no, don't like it. Just don't like the taste. Anyway, we're going to be playing a game this week called Tiki. This game is currently actually being kickstarted right now, and which I think at the point of which we're doing this recording has about 8 to 9 days left on the Kickstarter. But the developer decided to make the game available for people to play through Board Game Arena as a preview to the game being released for real, with the expected ship date of December of 2017. So we thought it would be fun to kind of play it and see what it's all about. We played one test game of this sometime last week, but we're going to play another game while we do our Babbling Rooks thing. And I encourage you, if you're interested in the game where it seems interesting, to play it yourself on Board Game Arena, or to visit the Kickstarter page and get an idea of how it works. The game rules, in brief, are there are these 9 tiles here that represent points that you can see on the corners of being 0 in the upper left-hand corner. There's 2 pineapples in the middle top, and there's 1 in the center, and there's -1 on the left-hand side center. And you place a totem down on any one of these squares, or you move one of your totems 1 square to the right or left or up or down. You don't move diagonally. If your totem occupies a square with somebody else's totem, then you go on top of it, and whoever is on top is the one that owns that space. So if Kyle were to move to the center, when you put a totem down, you have to put it on an empty square. You can't put your a totem directly on top of another person. But if I was next to Kyle somewhere, then I could go on top of him, or he could go on top of me. If you are in charge of a totem that has 2 pieces on it, then you move 2 squares, and you leave the bottom totem, whether it belongs to you or the other person, behind on the square that you're moving to. So if I had Kyle below me on the 2, up here where I'm pointing at right here, and I was on top of it, I could go down and leave Kyle's totem behind, and then move to the right, and then my totem would be on the square to the right. If there is a totem that's 3 pieces high, then the actual space gets resolved, and whoever is on the top of that space gets the points that are associated with the card, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. And then those totems of those 3 go back to the player that they belong to. The goal is to have 4 pineapples to win, or in the case of neither player having 4 pineapples, whoever has the most pineapples ends up winning. The way that it could be less than that is their pineapples can disappear from the game if you're put down on a negative space and you don't personally have any pineapples. If it resolves and you need to get rid of a pineapple, but you don't get rid of a pineapple, instead a pineapple gets removed from the game entirely. That's the game rules for the most part. There is some extended rules that involve this little character down here, which is the shaman, but I don't think we're going to use the shaman for the game that we're playing, at least for the first one. And so Kyle's going to make his first move here.
Go big or go home, Mendel. It's gonna be on that -1.
And while he finishes up his move, which he did, I'll ask the first collective question. I will say that, again, though, that we've changed our format to include some user-submitted questions or from some fan-submitted questions. So if you're interested in asking a question for us to use on the air for our Rooks episodes, then please ask a question, leave a comment in our YouTube video, or find me on Twitter or on Facebook, or ask a question via the form that I have also listed in the video description, and we'll choose one of those questions to answer per episode. We won't necessarily answer all of the questions. We're going to screen those and just make sure that we find the ones that we think are the most interesting and or not trolling. But feel free to ask us a question that's either for me or for Kyle or for both of us, and we'll use those to be a part of our regular Rooks episodes. So while I think about my first move here, I'll ask the first collective question that comes from me, and say, what is the most simplest and the most complex tabletop game that you enjoy playing?
Simplest and most complex. I would say that the simplest game to explain and set up that I enjoy playing still is still Codenames every once in a while. It's still, I mean, it's pretty basic, and it's good for people who enjoy word games and enjoy that kind of competition, which unfortunately doesn't really intersect a lot with my friends. But it's a pretty solid game that's fairly simple. As far as complexity, I guess the most complex game right now that I can think of would be Terraforming Mars, if we're not including any kind of expansions. With expansions, I would say that Resistance can be pretty complex, but still is one of my favorite games. But that's only if you play with the right expansions, and for some people it gets a little too complex, a little too heavy for them, but I still tend to enjoy it.
Do you consider... I guess in bringing this question up, there's always the question also of what exactly constitutes a complex versus non-complex game?
I would say that my basis of complexity is based on how long does it take to set up and talk it out and make sure that everybody's on the same page. Like, Terraforming Mars is pretty much the only game that I've had to sit and watch a YouTube video before playing to kind of get the basic understanding of the concept.
Okay.
Whereas Codenames, like, you can set it up and say, hey, this person's going to give you one word and a number. Try to think of what words on the board pertain to that word and the number. Plus, I also think of maybe the idea of how many things have different facets of winning the game or controlling the game. And so because of that, I guess I could also include Cities and Nights on Catan, because there's just a lot that goes on in Cities and Nights, which after you play it for a while it doesn't seem like it, but you've got night management, you've got your commodity management, things like that. And what I thoroughly enjoy is that you don't have to go after the same items to win the game.
Yeah, right. Multiple paths of victory is what makes that game work compared to the original Catan, which does not really have multiple paths of victory. Right.
And so that's why I kind of feel like having those multiple paths of victory in Terraforming Mars is also really great. The only thing that was really complex about Resistance is just there are so many different roles in the expansions. Some people enjoy playing with Assassin Commander, some people always like playing with the Bodyguard, some people don't want to give Reverser a chance because we never got a chance to include it earlier in the series of roles that I introduced. And at that point it became something that was quote-unquote too much.
Okay. I guess I'm being picky about it because I feel like just because a game is simple to understand does not necessarily mean that it's not complex.
Yeah, maybe. So then what is a better example then of a potentially complex game that's easy to learn to play for you?
Chess.
Okay, that's fair.
Or Go.
Yeah.
Things like that, right? And I was struggling with this question a little bit. I think because I think I kind of believe that Terraforming Mars is not actually a complex game, like because even though there's a lot of stuff going on, the gameplay itself, once you understand the rules, is pretty straightforward. I feel that way also about Twilight Imperium. That Twilight Imperium is a game that takes roughly an hour to describe, and you playing it is usually about a 6-hour to 8-hour affair, but the game itself is not actually complex. Once you understand what's going on, it just takes a long time to play just because the forces involved are really great. And that to me is a little different than a game that might actually be more complicated to play, even if the game is a little bit shorter.
No, that's fair. I can see that.
So, like the game that I feel, well, I guess I'll go with my answer. One of the simplest games that I've ever played, that I still enjoy playing, is actually an old pencil paper game called Stab or Bats. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, you take a piece of loose leaf paper and you create a line boundary on both sides. So you have a land area on your side, a land area on your opponent's side, and then in the middle is water. And then you put down 4 letters: S for submarine, which can only exist in the water; T for tank, which can only exist on your side of land; A for airplane, which can be on either both land or water; and B for boat, which I believe is just something else that can only be on the water. And when it's your turn, you can do one of two things. You can either move your individual letter tokens to another spot on your area, or you can shoot at the other person. And the way that you do that is... Woo, I win!
Oh yeah, it's only 4. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought it was 5.
Oh.
Whoops.
No, it's...
I definitely would have
4.
tried to block you at that point. Because I thought, I was like, alright, I'll be able to catch up again and get 2 more singles, and then it'll be kind of a race to get the last one. And I'm a dumbass.
Hey, I'm purple now, I think.
That's weird that it keeps switching. I don't like that.
The way that you do a movement is that you take your pencil and you put it directly over the letter that you've created. And if you're shooting, well, either way, you flick the pencil in a single stroke in the direction that you want to either move or shoot. And wherever that pencil stroke lands, if you're shooting and that pencil stroke lands and touches any of your opponent's stuff, then you successfully shot it and it dies. If you are moving, then you just move to the end of where you put your little flick. If you end up accidentally putting your submarine or your boat towards land or your tank towards water, then you accidentally kill your person. Or if you run into another character, then you end up killing each other. And so it's just a silly, simple little paper pencil game that I used to play in middle school / high school, and it was I don't know, a lot of fun.
Cool.
In terms of the most complex game, I've only played it once, and I only played it recently, and I really enjoyed it. Is this game called Arkwright? It's something that was introduced to me during one of the game nights that I'd had at Danny and Kaylee's, and I played it with Danny and Kaylee, actually. I think the game actually belongs to our friend Adam, but that was an interesting move.
Just want to see how it's going to play out.
I think it's going to play out like that.
Mm.
And I don't really know how to explain the game briefly, because I also only kind of vaguely remember all the exact rules, but Arkwright, it's about controlling the and you control the economy because you need workers in order to produce goods, but the more workers that get used for production of goods, then the more demand there is for those goods, which then controls how valuable that good might be, and that controls the price. So you set a price that's based on how many workers are actually out collectively, like not just workers that you have, but workers that everybody else uses, in combination with certain quality things that you can put on your goods, like quality assurance markers, not exactly, but basically you can set a thing to say this good is of better quality, so therefore demands more price, and that sets your price higher for those goods. And also then how many workers that you have determines how many goods that you're able to produce, and everybody's producing different goods, and different goods are valued in different ways, so everybody is kind of vying to try to corner the market for a particular good, and trying to do that by whilst manipulating the number of workers that are being used to produce that. And it's pretty interesting the way that mechanic ends up working, how you affect the market, and how you have to try to manipulate the market to do what you want is not a simple one-turn process. I don't know how much this will really show impact, but in the last game that we played, one of the special powers things that you can pick up as a temporary power is the decision of where to place the first player token. And at the end of the game, I decided that I needed to grab that because I needed the turn order to be something very particular. Like, it's almost like poker in that position really matters. What you decide to do in reaction to what other people decide to do is very key in the game.
Neat.
Took about 2 hours to play. It might have been 3. Well, I think it ended up being 3 hours, 2.5 hours, just because Danny had to explain the rules to us. And he had played it maybe twice before. I guess a testament is Danny plays a lot of board games, and usually when he plays a board game, before he plays a board game with somebody, if he's never played it before, he reads the rules and kind of runs through the game in demo himself, just so that he can be sure and he can feel comfortable with the rules. And this was the first time that Kaylee and I had played this game, and Danny said, yeah, I've played this game maybe 2 or 3 times, and I still don't quite understand how to win.
That's intense.
So, yeah. it's pretty...
That's fair.
Yeah,
so I guess
it's pretty interesting.
Complexity in setup versus complexity in how to win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair. I don't know of many games that I've played that are complex in winning. Or requires complexity of focusing on other people's layouts, other than like certain co-op games, but...
Right. But yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's probably one of the more complex games that I've actually played.
It's now on the list of games that I need to play as soon as I get back.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, while you think of your next move, I'll ask my collective question, which is, what is the next concert that you know for sure that you're going to, and what kind of genre is it, if people don't already know?
Well, Niente Forte is in a couple of weeks, so I'm definitely going to that since I kind of co-direct it. The first concert of that is April 3rd, which is a Monday. The first two concerts on Monday and Tuesday are at the University of New Orleans this year, and the third and fourth concert on Wednesday and Thursday are at Tulane. So there's those concerts.
Wow.
Those concerts are the next thing that I know that I'm going to for sure. Then that Saturday, the same week of Niente Forte, on that Saturday is the second day of French Quarter Fest, and I'm going to be performing in two things on that day. One as a part of French Quarter Fest during the classical part, quote unquote classical part. This new music collective that I'm a part of called Versapel. We're going to end up playing Terry Riley's In C. And I'm also going to play some other group unison piece that I don't quite remember the name of anymore. But it's by some Spanish composer that did some interesting things. So I'm going to do that. And then also one of the professors at the University of New Orleans who's kind of a big name composer, his name is Yotam Haber, and he's having a piece of music premiered like on a boat on the Mississippi that involves the LPO along with some community musicians that are being called in as volunteer. And I decided that I wanted to do that. If I can work out the rehearsal schedule compared to when I have to play for Versapel. And then the day after is our band fraternity's annual recital, and I think I might be performing in that also. So that's the next...
What are you going to do at recital?
What's that?
What are you going to do at recital, do you know?
I think it's going to end up being an old piece that I did in my graduate school and undergraduate school, actually. That's a solo piano / keyboard with some interactive electronics.
Okay.
It's just a matter of me going back and going through the Max programming and making sure that the Max programming still works. So I need to actually go through that programming at some point in the next couple of days to make sure that I can get it to actually work. But I also have a lot of other stuff that I've been trying to stay on top of when it comes to PR for Niente Forte, and we're in heavy recruitment season right now, and all this other kind of business, and there's a lot of administrative stuff going on, so it's kind of crazy, but it's going all right.
Your typical spring semester where you have no life.
Yeah, it's a little wild right now. What's your next concert?
Carell has now convinced me to come with her to 2 concerts. One of them being Chainsmokers, who I'd actually be pretty decently excited to see. And the other being Train. And as far as pop music goes, Train is just not on my list of faves. So, but it's going to be fun, and I know it's going to be exciting for her, which will make it more exciting for me. So those 2 are the most immediate. And then I'm still trying to decide, for those of you who don't know, Mendo and I are planning a trip to St. Louis, in about the next month and a half, I guess. And one of our favorite electronic artists is coming to St. Louis. His name's Clark. And I guess, what is that on, like a Tuesday or something?
It is on a Tuesday, yes.
Right. So it's on a Tuesday, and I don't know that I would have sufficient time to potentially be taking off of work, or sufficient money to be staying in a hotel or things like that for those extra couple days. So I'm still debating on whether I want to see him there or potentially go out and see him in Houston. But that's definitely on my radar. And then I'm still wondering if I need to buy tickets to Jazz Fest this year.
When is Jazz Fest? Like, which weekends?
I think it's the last weekend of April, the first weekend of May. I'm not sure.
If it's the weekend of the 28th, 29th, and May 5th and May 6th, then I can go to both weekends probably. If it's the weekend before that, I can't because I'll be at WGI finals that week, so I'd only be able to go to the second weekend. Hopefully I can go on a weekend where freaking Stevie Wonder is actually playing. because
Yeah.
I missed seeing Stevie Wonder last year since that particular concert got rained out. So I
Right.
really want to see him.
When you said you're going to WGI Finals, like you're talking like finals, like in Dayton?
Yeah. I must move the
That's
shaman.
cool.
I don't want to move the shaman. No, we're not moving the shaman.
I still don't understand the shaman piece whatsoever.
Oh, I don't know that I've ever actually looked up the rules for it. It has something to do with restricting the movement through a particular tile.
Oh.
Let's see. Shaman can
That's
be placed between two villages. All the moves between those two villages are forbidden. So yeah, it's a pathway. It's a pathway blocker.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I won the game, by the way. Oh no, I guess not. I guess you can do a defensive move.
Yeah, middle. You don't know.
So I'll ask while you're considering your move, I'll ask the next personal question, which is, let me not pull it up on the phone or on the screen so that I cover the screen of our game. How prepared do you feel you are to come back to the States?
Oof. Wow, that's a tough question. I'm gonna do this first while I think about that question. Get myself some good 0 points. That's okay. Boom, 0. I must move the shaman.
Yeah, just ignore that. Say don't move.
No,
the shaman.
Mendel, I'm gonna place it right on the 2.
You don't put it on a village. You put it in a pathway between two villages.
Oh, gotcha. I think there are a lot of facets to that question, to answering that question. One of it involves my life when I get back, mainly where am I going to live and what am I going to do job-wise, which I've got several things already lined up. And Carell's been doing a great job of talking to people within the church and advocating places for me to stay, which would be really neat if I stayed in one place because the rent's super cheap and it would be furnished. The only problem is just location-wise, it would be kind of a pain.
Where's it
where I
at?
worked. It's out near Gentilly.
Oh, okay.
So if I wanted to work at Dat Dog again, which multiple people have told me that as soon as I walk in the door, if I want a job, I've got it on the spot. Which is kind of nice, having that security. But also, again, if I lived out there near Gentilly...
That'd be a pretty big commute, yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm still thinking through aspects like that, but I think as far as mentally and spiritually prepared, I think I'm pretty ready. I hate the idea of leaving, because there are so many people that I've developed even further relationships with, and people that I genuinely love and care about, and it sucks thinking of I'm going to leave Charles basically on his own to run teams. Like, Spencer, our president, will be coming down quite a bit. I'm glad the totems have different faces so I can recognize what's on bottom.
That's good component design.
Yes, indeed. But other than that, I think I'm pretty well ready. Like, Carell and I are both pretty sick of this long distance deal. And even though it's been good that we've been able to do it for the past year plus, like, it's still frustrating at times. And we're just kind of excited to be back together again and see how that progresses our future plans. I'm also excited to kind of take like the first couple weeks of my time back in the States and kind of road trip a little bit because I've got a little money saved up. And so I'm gonna be in Dothan for a while, for about a week, and then it's gonna be Easter weekend, so I'm gonna be back in New Orleans for that. And then like that next weekend, I believe, I'm gonna be traveling to Jacksonville for, it's technically a board meeting that's happening, even though I'm not a board member. Spencer invited all the staff to be there. So all but like 2 staff members are going to be there as well. And it'll be nice to see everybody again, even after just a few weeks of being gone. And there's always just so many people that know and love me in those areas like Jacksonville, because that's where the majority of our teams come from. So it'll be nice to get to see them and thank them for everything that they've done. We're staying at the house of this really sweet elderly couple who come down here like a couple times a year, and they're just so loving and kind. Like, it's gonna be really sweet. It's just hard trying to, I guess, ultimately to wrap up this question, it's just hard to feel like I'm making an impact in these last 3 weeks, I guess. Since I already have so much stuff planned out for as soon as I get back, and there's a lot of other stuff that I'm going to have to plan out once I do get back, it's just hard to feel like I'm really making an impact, and so I'm trying to focus all my time and effort into putting myself out there as much as possible, which I think is what has caused me to get sick, because I'm currently under a stomach bug right now. But hopefully that'll heal up soon, and I can stay focused again on trying to finish out strong. And I don't know what I want to do.
You have some interesting stuff going on.
It's hard for me to think both offensively and defensively.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest trouble, because it is such a... I mean, it's pseudo chess-like in that it's a one-move deal, but...
You're in a weird position right now.
I am. I should do this. So, let me look up my personal question real quick. What is the next piece of technology that is coming out somewhat in the future, in the near future, that you are excited about?
That's a good question. Like, there isn't really a whole lot that I'm tracking in tech right now. I guess I don't know if drop mix counts, but I'm pretty interested in drop mix, and what that's going to do.
I would say that counts.
There's been a lot of question about the validity of the actual smartwatch market now that it seems to have underperformed in its second generation of stuff. So Motorola decided to not put out a new Moto 360. I'm kind of waiting to see what Google brings to that table, and if they because they're supposed to release a new smartwatch at some point next year. Let's see what else. Yeah, I don't really know what else. I think that covers any tech that I'm interested in. Really, it's difficult for me to actually get that excited about tech, I think.
How do you mean?
Because I don't know. I guess I feel like tech is there's way too much hype train around tech in general for me to feel like I can get too excited about something until it's released in the market and some people have actually put it through its paces.
That's fair.
I'm just gonna do that.
That's funny. Had you placed yours in the middle piece, I would have gone over and down to clear out those three.
Yeah. So.
You gotta move the shaman, Mendel.
Oh. I'm not gonna move the shaman. I guess that's all I can really think of. Like, tech. Even though I like tech, I don't get really hyped up about tech that's consumer level. I get hyped about some tech that's not consumer level. I think that self-driving vehicles are pretty fascinating, and I'm interested to see how that stuff develops. I'm interested to see how the development of medical science and how technology can help create better things of that sort of nature. I'm interested in some home automation stuff, although I think that home automation is kind of petered off in what it can do and what people want it to do. I don't know what sort of hype there is about technology right now anyway, because if you go online and try to find anything, everything is about the hype train, and I'm not really that attuned to the hype train.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'll throw in the last actual collective question that we have here. And this question comes to us from Tori Novak. If you could wake up tomorrow with one new quality or ability, what would it be?
Health. Guess that shouldn't count, but I'd really love to wake up tomorrow and not feel like crap.
Yeah, I think that maybe the question is not designed to be quite so immediate.
That's fair. But that'd be really useful right now. Like, what if it was just infinite health always? I'm always at my peak performance. I'll think about that. But that's probably not going to be my answer.
Okay. Sure, I'll occupy that last space.
There you go.
Because why not?
Because...
Actually, there's some great strategic reasons to occupy that last space, so that was not arbitrary.
Right. I don't know, there's just such a large amount of abilities, and I don't know, like, are we talking, like, super abilities, or are we just talking, like, different traits, characteristics, or things like that?
I don't...
Stuff that actually is feasible, or stuff that is like, I want to fly through walls?
I don't read it as a super ability. I just read it as a characteristic that you don't have that you wish that you had, or a quality that you don't have that you wish that you had without working on it.
I guess I would say I do tend to have this mentality a lot of out of sight, out of mind, and so I actually do a very poor job of maintaining my friendships while I'm here. And that's really pretty much anywhere. Like when I left high school, I only maintained one friendship out of high school, and some of the friendships are still there, but not really. It's mostly that I don't have the time, but also how much time does it take to throw out a quick text message saying, "Hey, what's up? How you been?" And I guess it's just never been my personality, and that's something that if I wanted to change, I would want that. I would want to be more proactive in maintaining relationships and friendships.
Have you known a life without internet?
Yes. It was very brief, but yes.
I tend to think that maintaining friendships with all of the people that you've become friends with over a long period of time is pretty difficult, and the only reason that that it becomes accentuated is because of the rise of the internet making it easy for people to connect to each other instantly. I think that everybody before internet became a thing had difficulties trying to maintain friendships of people once you move to a new area, but that was more accepted because the means of communication was that much more difficult. You had to call them on the phone and do letters that were actual snail mail letters to correspondence, and that's the sort of thing where if you contacted that person once a month, then that was acceptable because letters take a while to get delivered and people have their own kind of things. But the internet made it easier for people to connect instantly, and so therefore created an expectation that could, in my opinion, sometimes be unrealistic when it comes to what it actually means to keep that constant contact with all the people that you would want to keep constant contact with.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, that's an interesting move.
I didn't really have anything that wouldn't allow you to win within the next few turns without taking a negative score.
Gotcha.
Which doesn't matter because I had 0, so basically all I did was eliminate one of the pineapples.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I guess I gotta do this now. There's qualities that I wish I kind of instantly had. I think that one quality or ability that I wish I had was to have the ability to construct things easily, if that makes sense. Like I have a general idea of how to build really basic, simple things from nothing from scratch, but I don't have a lot of construction skills to know how to do that for real. Like spatial awareness for and geometry of physical buildings or physical structures are things that I didn't even begin to understand until a much later period of my life. So I wish that I could build things from scratch. It'd be neat to build a house from scratch, or to even build, like, to be able to say, okay, if I know how to, like, we were talking at some point a while back about building a gaming table, and kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to build a gaming table, then I wouldn't really know how to do that even if I watched a video. Like, I understand it, but it would take me a long time.
Well, then we start with that gaming table.
I guess.
And I teach you. And then you can build as many gaming tables as you want, Mendel.
I wish I had the ability to bake better, because I'm not a great baker.
Is that why you kind of have this slight aversion to baking?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
But it's also kind of a timing thing, because usually baking takes longer to do than something over the stove. But it's just a little bit weird to me to, like, especially after watching like all 7 series of the Great British Bake Off, like, there's a lot of science behind how to make something turn out really well in the oven that can still kind of be chaotic depending on various circumstances, which to me is exactly why I would never become a double reed player. Because if you've ever talked to anybody that's had to make their own oboe reeds or own bassoon reeds, you understand that you can do exactly the same process for 2 reeds, but yet have both of those reeds come out very differently based on circumstances that are completely out of your control. And
yeah, that's fair.
And I feel like baking is kind of like that, and that the degree of which that could potentially ruin a bake is not something that I really understand how to be able to control, or to kind of set back or do different things like that. And the Great British Bake Off has definitely helped me understand some of those things a little bit more, and also understand the techniques of how people, even in the high pressure timing environment, adjust for those kind of things and make those kind of things work. But it's still a challenge. So
yeah, that's fair. In times that we've talked about baking versus cooking, I know that you definitely enjoy the idea of being able to cook by feel and be able to taste while it's cooking.
Mm-hmm. And you can't do that in baking.
You're right, you can't. You just have to trust that what you're going to do is going to turn out fine. And even if it doesn't turn out perfect like you wanted it, you and I should have like a king cake baking party next year for Mardi Gras. Because what I love is that you could do the exact same process. Like, of the 5 king cakes that I baked, and I did the exact same process for 4 of them, because one of them I didn't have actually a mixer. But they still every single one of them turned out differently. And I think that's something that you just kind of have to get used to. Like, you have to understand that there are things that are going to be different, that are outside of your control. How the heating happens within the oven, if it happens evenly, if it happens a little bit unevenly, and it still works out.
Yeah, right. Have you watched any of the Great British Bake Off?
No, I've stopped watching most of those competition shows.
Great British Bake Off is really great. Primarily because it's very, I think it's the difference between it being a British show versus an American show. In some ways, like, it's very community. Like, all the bakers are competing against each other, but they're also simultaneously rooting for each other. There's no bad blood that ever happens between the actual bakers.
That's cool.
And that's pretty nice. And I don't know, I feel like it's worthwhile. And it did educate me a great deal in a lot of baking science that I just didn't know before. And also makes me appreciate the amount of butter that goes into a lot of sweet bakes is terrifying.
You gotta get used to that. No, butter and milk, they're good for you.
I don't know. I don't know about that exactly, but
well, it's not. All right, think about it this way: you're putting in 2 plus usually 6 of butter into something, but it's distributed over a whole cake. Are you gonna sit there and eat the whole cake?
Well, no.
Well, so there you go. So it's not like you're eating a pound of butter every time. It's just, if you ate everything, you would be.
Yeah, we'll see. Jury's still a little bit out on how I feel about some of that stuff, but
Butter is not an enemy, Endel.
no, it's not an enemy, but I don't really use it ever, but if I were to use it, it's something that I kind of use in moderation.
Do you ever make like Alfredo sauces or things like that?
No. I mean, I'll eat that occasionally, but I don't eat it a lot. I like cream sauces, but I don't use it that much. I don't do it that much.
That's fair.
This is an interesting setup, but I guess the viewers at home are not going to actually see the end of this game because I think that's the last question that we have. So,
yep.
So yeah, that's Tiki. It's a pretty interesting game. We didn't play some of our games the best strategically, but I think that we've re-warmed up to it a little bit in this last game.
Yeah, that first game I made a terrible decision to let you take that too. I was like, I just want to see how this would play out.
So, but it is intriguing. I have to say that the first time when I read about the game, I kind of thought, oh, this game is kind of okay seeming, but it's fairly simple and it's kind of whatever. And but then when Kyle and I actually started to play it, we discovered that the strategy is a lot more nuanced than I think either of us initially thought. I think it's worth giving it a try. It's nice that you can try it on Board Game Arena before actually deciding to kickstart it or even decide that you want to go out and buy it, which I think is a nice advantage to anything that's like that. So check it out and see if you would enjoy that or not. Support the Kickstarter over the next however many days the Kickstarter is still active, or post-back it, depending on when this video goes up, if you seem interested in it. So yeah, next time we will do another sausage roll episode and see how far we get on that. Until then, yeah, I guess have a good week or a couple of weeks or whatever, and something like depending on when we get this whole thing done, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep, see you later.
Cool, bye. Kyle, we're having some technical difficulties here because Kyle's internet is a little suspect. Seems like he has disappeared. While he's disappeared, I guess I will do nothing, actually.